There's a discovery from 1982 that completely inverts everything you think you know about yourself. David Bohm, a physicist who worked alongside Einstein, proved something that sounds impossible. The world you're experiencing right now, the screen in front of you, the room you're sitting in, your own hands, it's not what you think it is. It's a projection. A holographic image generated from a dimension of reality that exists beyond what your senses can detect. And the part that changes everything? You're not the one watching this projection. You're the field generating it. Think about how a hologram works for a moment. You see a three-dimensional form floating in space, completely solid, completely real to your perception. But if you reach out to touch it, there's nothing there. Just air. Because what you're seeing isn't the object itself. It's light interference patterns projecting an image from a two-dimensional surface into apparent three-dimensional space. Bohm discovered that this exact mechanism describes the entire universe. Everything you perceive, all matter, all energy, space itself, time itself, is what he called the explicate order. The projected dimension, the unfolded reality. But beneath it, generating it, invisible to direct perception, is the implicate order, the enfolded dimension, the source field from which everything emerges. Here's what makes this revolutionary. The implicate order doesn't operate according to the rules you're familiar with. Distance means nothing there. Time doesn't constrain it. Separation between objects, between people, between moments, that's just a feature of the projection, not the source. Which means, and I need you to really absorb this, at the fundamental level of existence, everything is unified. Not as a metaphor, not as spiritual poetry, but as measurable, testable, scientific fact through what Bohm identified as the quantum potential. Every thought in your awareness, every feeling moving through you, every memory you carry, every possibility you might experience, all of it exists enfolded in this deeper order, continuously folding and unfolding, generating the holographic experience you call your life. Most people hear about this and file it away as interesting science trivia, something to reference at parties. But what if this isn't just physics? What if this explains the mystery of why certain people completely transform their existence in what seems like moments, while others repeat the same patterns year after year after year? What if the difference has nothing to do with willpower, nothing to do with effort, nothing to do with how severe your history is? What if it's simply this? Some people discovered how to work with the source field, and everyone else is still trying to rearrange the projection. Before we go further, and we're about to explore territory most teachers avoid, I need to be clear about who this is for. This isn't content for people seeking simple solutions. This isn't for people who want me to promise that transformation is easy, that manifestation is effortless, that you can just maintain positive thoughts and watch everything shift. Because you already know that's not true. You already tried that approach. The affirmations, the visualizations, the mantras and the programs and the content, promising that if you just believed intensely enough, desired it strongly enough, stayed positive consistently enough, your reality would transform. And it didn't. Not in the way they said it would. Let me tell you what I recognize about you. You carry a sense of being fundamentally broken that most people never experience. Not just hurt, not just wounded, not just processing something difficult. You feel damaged at your core, like some essential part of you was destroyed in childhood. Your innocence, your natural trust, your ability to feel joy without effort. And you've carried this internal damage for so long that you've begun to believe it defines who you are. You've attempted to repair it. You've genuinely tried therapy, meditation, breath work, plant medicines, energy work, shadow work, inner child work. You've attended the workshops and studied the books and followed the teachers, and some of it created temporary relief. But then you encountered this barrier. This point where nothing penetrates deeper, where you can understand your patterns intellectually, but you can't actually shift them. And here's the part nobody discusses, the part that makes you feel even more fundamentally damaged. You observe other people healing. You see them sharing their breakthroughs on social media. You hear them in therapeutic spaces describing how they released their wounds, how they integrated their shadow, how they forgave their parents, and you think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I access that? Am I too damaged? Is my history too severe? Did something happen to me that's categorically different from what happened to them? And beneath all of that, beneath the frustration and the exhaustion and the confusion, lives something even more difficult to acknowledge. You're terrified of hope because hope is the most dangerous thing. Hope is what got crushed in childhood when the people meant to protect you failed. Hope is what diminishes slightly every time you try something new and it doesn't create change. Hope is what makes you vulnerable to devastation, and you're uncertain whether you can survive another devastation. So you protect yourself. You remain curious but maintain skepticism. You study quantum physics and manifestation and consciousness. But you preserve this intellectual separation, this protection, this voice that says, "This sounds compelling in theory, but it probably won't work for me because I'm different, because I'm more damaged, because there's something about my specific type of brokenness that makes me unrepairable." I recognize this because I've inhabited that space. Not your exact story. Every journey is unique. But that feeling, that sense of being fundamentally, irreversibly broken, of being damaged at a level that can't be fixed, of watching other people who seem whole and wondering what it's like to exist in a reality that hasn't betrayed you at its core. And here's what I need you to understand before we continue. This content is not going to bypass your experience. I'm not going to tell you that your wounds weren't real, that your childhood was irrelevant, that you just need to select different thoughts and everything will resolve. That's spiritual bypassing, and it's harmful, and it doesn't create actual transformation. But I am going to share something that might sound impossible in this moment. Something that physicist David Bohm discovered, that I've spent years attempting to comprehend, that contradicts everything your wounds taught you about the nature of reality. You're not broken. I don't mean you're not broken anymore, because you completed the healing journey. I don't mean you're not broken because you're strong or resilient or a survivor. I mean you were never broken. Not at your essence, not at your core. Because at the level of the implicate order, the source dimension that Bohm discovered, wholeness cannot break. And I know that sounds like I'm dismissing your experience. I know it sounds like I'm invalidating your pain, your genuine trauma. But stay with me, because what Bohm discovered isn't philosophy. It's physics, and it transforms everything. Let me show you what Bohm demonstrated. He conducted this experiment using ink and glycerin. Basic setup: a cylinder filled with clear glycerin containing a single drop of black ink. When you rotate the cylinder slowly in one direction, the ink drop stretches and disperses until it appears to completely disappear. It looks like chaos, right? Like the ink has been destroyed, scattered, lost permanently. But here's what shocked everyone. When you rotate the cylinder in the reverse direction, slowly, precisely, the ink reforms. Not approximately like the original drop. Exactly the original drop. Identical shape, identical position, as if it never disappeared. The order never left. It was simply hidden, enfolded. Bohm named this the implicate order from the Latin implicare, meaning to enfold. And what we perceive with our senses, what we experience as the physical world, he named the explicate order, the unfolded dimension, the projection. Now consider what this means for everything. When that ink drop vanished, it didn't actually go anywhere. It unfolded into a deeper order, and when it reappeared, it wasn't generated from nothing. It unfolded from where it had always existed. Consider what this means for you, for your innocence, for your joy, for your capacity to trust, to feel safe, to experience wholeness. They didn't vanish. They weren't destroyed in childhood. They unfolded. They exist right now in the implicate order waiting to unfold again. This isn't spiritual comfort. This isn't me attempting to make you feel better emotionally. This is what Bohm proved through mathematics. He demonstrated that at the quantum level, which means at the foundational level of all existence, nothing is ever truly destroyed. Particles don't vanish. They unfold back into the quantum potential, and they can unfold again. You are not the accumulation of your traumas. You are not the sum of what was done to you. You are, and I need you to really receive this, you are a totality enfolded throughout all of space. Your wholeness exists in this moment, in the implicate order. It never departed. You simply can't perceive it from the explicate level. And here's the stunning revelation. Bohm discovered that the explicate order, this physical reality, is continuously being generated and dissolved, continuously unfolding and unfolding. What appears to be a solid, continuous particle moving through space is actually a rapid series of unfoldments and unfoldments, creation and dissolution occurring so rapidly it appears permanent, which means your identity, the you that experiences itself as broken, isn't a fixed structure. It's a pattern of unfoldment, and patterns are changeable, not because you're repairing damaged parts, but because you're allowing a different pattern to unfold from the wholeness that has always existed. Let me ask you something. When you were young, before the trauma occurred, do you remember experiences of pure aliveness? Perhaps just brief moments, perhaps during play or laughter or feeling warmth on your skin. That wasn't a different version of you. That wasn't the innocent self that got destroyed. That was the pattern of wholeness unfolding, and it exists right now in the implicate order, still accessible. The question isn't, how do I repair what's broken? The question is, how do I allow wholeness to unfold again? And before you dismiss this as beautiful philosophy that doesn't address your actual struggles, your anxiety or your depression, or your inability to trust others or sustain relationships. Before you reject this as another concept that sounds profound but doesn't create real change, let me show you what else Bohm discovered, because this is where it becomes practical. This is where quantum physics intersects with your daily existence. Ready to go deeper? Here's what makes this sophisticated, and I'm not going to oversimplify it because your intelligence is part of why you're engaging with this content. Bohm discovered something he called infinite causality, and this completely revolutionizes how we understand trauma. Consider Abraham Lincoln's assassination. Surface-level causation. John Wilkes Booth discharged a weapon, but Bohm would argue that's not the cause. That's merely the final unfoldment in a chain of infinite causes. The invention of firearms, the evolution of human consciousness, the specific cultural conditions that generated Booth's belief system, his childhood experiences, his parents' childhood experiences, the entire history of the universe leading to that precise moment. Infinite causes, all enfolded in the implicate order, all unfolding simultaneously to generate that single event. Now apply this framework to your childhood trauma. Your wound isn't caused by your mother's narcissism or your father's emotional absence or that specific incident when you were young. Those are merely the explicit manifestations, the visible unfoldments. But beneath them, in the implicate order, there are infinite causes, generational wounds, cultural programming, your grandparents' unresolved pain, economic conditions, historical forces, quantum probabilities. And here's why this matters profoundly. It means you can stop searching for the single cause, the one memory to process, the one person to forgive, the one belief to transform. Because there isn't one cause. There are infinite causes, and they're all still enfolded in the implicate order. But, and this is essential, if there are infinite causes for your suffering, then there are also infinite access points for healing. You don't have to locate the root cause and resolve it. You can work with any point in the pattern, transform one unfoldment, and you transform the entire holographic projection. I know what you're thinking. That sounds overwhelming. How am I supposed to work with infinite causes? You're not. You're going to work with the quantum potential. If what you're hearing right now is activating something in you, if you're recognizing yourself in this exploration, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You're signaling to the field that you're ready for this frequency. Bohm discovered that at the quantum level, there's a field, not electromagnetic, not gravitational, something entirely different that connects everything in existence. He called it the quantum potential. And here's what's revolutionary. It doesn't weaken with distance. Unlike gravitational force, which diminishes as objects separate, the quantum potential maintains the same intensity everywhere, which means everything is influencing everything else continuously, simultaneously. Your thoughts aren't isolated electrochemical signals in your brain. They're patterns in the quantum potential. Your emotions aren't merely personal sensations. They're waves in this universal field. And when you shift your internal state, not through forced positive thinking, but through genuine coherence with the implicate order, you're transforming the field that organizes all the particles in your reality. This is why manifestation produces inconsistent results, why affirmations often fail, but spontaneous transformations occur. Because you cannot manipulate the projection. You have to transform the source. You have to access the implicate order where the patterns are enfolded. And the way you access it isn't through force. It's through alignment, through coherence, through developing awareness of the deeper order beneath the surface appearance. Let me be absolutely clear about something. This doesn't mean your trauma wasn't real. This doesn't mean the abuse never occurred, that the neglect didn't wound you, that your suffering is imaginary. The explicate order is real. The projection is a genuine projection. Your pain is real, but it's not ultimate. It's not permanent. It's not who you are at the deepest level. You are not a damaged projection attempting to repair itself. You are the source of the projection, and at that level, at the level of the implicate order, you have always been whole. Shall we explore how this actually functions, the mechanics of unfoldment? because this is where it becomes practical. I need to address something before we continue because I know what's occurring in your awareness right now. Part of you is resonating with this. This makes sense. The physics aligns with something you've always intuited. But there's another part, perhaps the louder part, that's already constructing counter-arguments. Wait, but if I'm the source of the projection, why didn't I just project a safe childhood? Why did I allow the trauma? Am I now responsible for my own abuse? Is this just another version of you create your reality that places blame on me? Let me answer that directly. No, you, the conscious you, the wounded child you, the current you engaging with this content, didn't create your childhood. You weren't manifesting from some enlightened state of conscious intention. You were a child, a participant in a reality being projected from the implicate order through infinite causes that had nothing to do with your value or your energetic frequency or your mental focus. But here's what Bohm discovered that transforms everything. The observer consciousness itself participates in which possibilities unfold from the implicate order into the explicate order. This is the observer effect, not the simplified version you've encountered in manifestation content, the actual physics. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in superposition, all possibilities enfolded simultaneously until they're observed. Then they collapse into one actuality, one unfoldment. Bohm expanded this. He proposed that the observer isn't generating reality from nothing. The observer is participating in which aspects of the implicate order unfold, like selecting which portion of the holographic source to project. Now here's where this gets even more profound, and most people teaching manifestation completely miss this. Bohm discovered that the observer isn't located where you think it is. You experience yourself as being inside your head, looking out through your eyes at a world that's separate from you. But that's the explicate order deceiving you. That's the projection creating the illusion of separation. The actual observer, the field of awareness that's reading these words right now, isn't confined to your skull. It's not produced by your brain. Your brain is part of the projection. The observer exists at the level of the implicate order, the source field, and from that dimension, it's generating both your internal experience and your external reality simultaneously. Think about what this means. You've been operating under the assumption that there's a you in here and a world out there, subject and object, observer and observed. But Bohm's physics reveals that this distinction only exists at the explicate level. At the implicate level, the observer and the observed are aspects of the same undivided wholeness. This is why changing your external circumstances without changing your internal coherence never works long-term. You get the new job, but you bring the same frequency of unworthiness. You enter the new relationship, but you bring the same pattern of abandonment. Because you're still operating from the assumption that you're in here trying to manipulate a world out there, when actually, both the inner and outer are projections from the same source field. And here's what changes when you truly understand this. You stop trying to control your external reality. You stop trying to force outcomes. You stop exhausting yourself attempting to manipulate the projection. Instead, you recognize that your access point isn't out there in the world. Your access point is your coherence with the implicate order. Change the source field, and the projection transforms naturally. But there's something else Bohm discovered that most people teaching this material completely overlook. The quantum potential, this field that connects everything, doesn't just connect things in space. It connects things across time. Past, present, and future are all enfolded in the implicate order simultaneously. which means your past isn't actually behind you. It's enfolded in the quantum field right now, still influencing which patterns unfold into your present experience. And your future isn't ahead of you waiting to happen. Multiple possible futures are unfolded right now, and which one unfolds depends on your current coherence. This is why healing trauma isn't really about going back in time and fixing something that happened. You can't change the past events at the explicate level, but you can change your coherence with those events at the implicate level. You can allow the pain that's been kept enfolded to finally unfold, express itself, and then unfold again in a different configuration. And when that happens, something remarkable occurs. Your present experience shifts because the active information you're providing to the quantum potential has changed. And the future patterns that can unfold shift as well, because they're no longer being organized by the same trauma coherence. Let me give you another concrete example of how this plays out. You might notice that you keep attracting the same type of partner. Different people, different circumstances, but the same essential dynamic. Traditional psychology would say you have an attachment pattern, a repetition compulsion, and you need to work through it over time. But from Bohm's perspective, here's what's actually happening. There's a pattern enfolded in the implicate order, shaped by your childhood experiences, by infinite causes stretching back through generations. That pattern is constantly unfolding and unfolding, creating your current reality. The partners you attract aren't separate from you. They're part of the same holographic projection being generated from your coherence with that particular frequency in the quantum potential. So when you try to choose a different partner, you're still operating at the explicate level. You're trying to rearrange the projection, but the source pattern hasn't changed. Your coherence hasn't shifted. So the same essential dynamic unfolds again, just with a different face. The shift happens when you stop trying to choose better and instead become aware of what's unfolded. When you feel the terror of intimacy, the rage at being unseen, the grief of never having been safely held, when you allow these enfolded patterns to fully unfold without resistance, your coherence changes. And when your coherence changes, different patterns can unfold from the quantum potential. Not because you're trying to manifest a better partner, but because you're no longer coherent with the frequency that was generating that dynamic. And here's the essential part. This isn't about maintaining positive thoughts. It's about coherence. Consider a radio receiver. There are countless frequencies broadcasting simultaneously: music, talk programs, static, emergency broadcasts, all of them existing in the same space right now, passing through your physical form. But your radio only receives one station at a time, the one it's tuned to, the one it's coherent with. You, your consciousness, your emotional patterns, your beliefs about reality are the tuning mechanism. You're not generating the broadcasts. You're selecting which one unfolds into your experience. And here's where trauma enters. Trauma doesn't just wound you emotionally. It changes your tuning. It shifts your coherence to frequencies of threat, abandonment, unworthiness. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because that's trauma's function. It's adaptive. It kept you vigilant to danger. It enabled your survival. But now you're an adult. The immediate threat has passed, and you're still tuned to those frequencies, still unfolding those patterns from the implicate order. Not because you desire to, not because you're consciously choosing it, but because your nervous system, your belief structures, your emotional patterns, they remain coherent with that frequency. And this is why traditional healing approaches, sometimes feel limited because you're attempting to transform the projection. You're in therapy processing your mother. You're doing EMDR on the memories. You're attempting to rewire your thought patterns. All of which can provide value. All of which has legitimacy. But you're still operating at the explicate level, the level of the projection. What if instead you learn to shift your coherence to tune to a different frequency in the quantum potential? I know you're thinking, okay, but how? How do I actually do that? And here's where it becomes both simple and uncomfortable. Because the answer isn't a technique. It's not a meditation or a visualization or a series of steps. The answer is, and I need you to hear this without your intellectual defenses activating. The answer is, you have to feel what you've been resisting feeling. Now, what we're exploring today is just one doorway into understanding how you operate as a field rather than a separate self trapped inside a projection. In my book, Beyond the Frequencies, A Quantum Guide to Consciousness Mastery, I map out the complete system of how you shift from unconscious transmission to conscious creation, from seeking wholeness to recognizing yourself as the source field itself. If you're ready to explore the deeper layers of how the quantum potential responds to your coherence, how to work with the 9 master frequencies that organize reality, and how to move from manifestation to embodiment, you'll find the full framework there. It's linked in the pinned comment below. Stay with me. In the implicate order, everything is unfolded simultaneously. Your joy and your terror, your wholeness and your wound, your innocence and your shame. They're all there, all present at once, all part of the totality. But in the explicate order, in your daily experience, you've learned to unfold only certain parts. The parts that feel manageable, the parts that don't overwhelm your system. You've learned to keep the pain enfolded, hidden, suppressed, which makes complete sense. That's how you survived. But here's what Bohm's physics suggests. When you keep something perpetually enfolded, when you resist a pattern from unfolding, you actually stabilize it. You lock it in place. You keep selecting it as the frequency to avoid, which paradoxically keeps you tuned to it. The path forward isn't to resist harder. The path forward is to allow it to fully unfold, to let the enfolded pain become explicate. Not permanently, not as a lasting state, but as a wave, as a temporary unfoldment that can then enfold again, this time without the resistance that kept it locked. This is what meditation teachers mean by being with emotion. This is what somatic therapists mean by completing the stress response. This is what Bohm's physics would describe as allowing the full pattern to unfold and unfold naturally without interference. And when you do this, when you stop attempting to control the projection and instead allow the deeper order to express itself, something shifts. Your coherence changes, not through effort, but through surrender, through allowing reality to be what it is at the implicate level. You stop fighting the source. You stop attempting to rearrange the projection with your hands. You become aware that you're not inside the projection. You're the source of it. And from that awareness, different patterns can unfold. Pause for a moment and feel into this. Have you experienced a shift in your coherence recently? A moment where you stopped trying to control the projection and something naturally transformed? Drop a comment below sharing what shifted for you. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Now, I know this still sounds abstract, so let me make it concrete. Let me show you what this looks like in your actual daily experience. Because this is where quantum physics meets the moment you wake up with anxiety. The moment you can't trust someone who genuinely loves you. The moment you sabotage something positive because wholeness feels threatening. Here's what this means for your existence right now. Today, in this moment, you are living inside a quantum field, a field that is infinite in potential, a field that responds not to your effort, but to your alignment, not to your desperation, but to your coherence, not to what you're doing, but to what you're being. And I want you to understand something essential. Bohm discovered that the quantum potential, this field that connects everything, has a property he called active information. It's not merely energy. It's not merely force. It's information that actively organizes matter. Consider a ship being guided by radar. The radar signals don't push the ship physically. They don't have sufficient force, but they contain information that guides the ship's much larger energy systems. The quantum potential operates the same way. It's subtle, it's informational, but it organizes everything. Your focus, your attention, your emotional state. They aren't generating reality from nothing, but they are providing active information to the quantum potential. They're influencing which patterns unfold from the implicate order. And here's the elegant truth. You don't have to execute this perfectly. You don't have to master some sophisticated technique because the implicate order already contains wholeness. Your task isn't to create it or achieve it or earn it. Your task is to stop interfering with its natural unfoldment. Now let me address something crucial that most teachings on manifestation and healing completely miss. There's a reason why you've been interfering with wholeness's natural unfoldment, and it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because the trauma coherence you're operating from has convinced you that wholeness is dangerous. Think about it. When you were a child and you expressed your natural wholeness, your joy, your aliveness, your authentic self, what happened? Perhaps you were punished. Perhaps you were shamed. Perhaps you were abandoned. Perhaps you learned that being whole, being fully yourself, being fully alive was the thing that created danger or pain or rejection. So your system developed a very intelligent adaptation. It learned to keep wholeness enfolded. It learned to project a reality where you're small, where you're broken, where you're not too much, because that felt safer than the risk of expressing fullness and being devastated again. This is why healing isn't really about acquiring something new. It's about recognizing the safety that your system created through brokenness is no longer serving you. It's about understanding that the coherence with trauma was adaptive then, but it's keeping you locked in patterns now. And here's what's profound about Bohm's discovery of the quantum potential. Because everything is connected through this field, your healing doesn't just affect you. When you shift your coherence, when you allow wholeness to unfold through you, you're changing the active information in the quantum field that connects you to everyone and everything. This means your healing ripples out, not in some vague metaphorical way, but through actual quantum mechanics. When you transform the pattern that's been unfolding through you, you're transforming the pattern in the field itself, which affects everyone connected to that field, which is everyone. Your mother who wounded you, she's connected to you through the quantum potential. Your father who abandoned you, connected through the quantum potential. When you shift your coherence, you're not just changing your experience of them, you're providing different active information to the field that connects you, which can allow different patterns to unfold in the relationship itself. This doesn't mean they'll suddenly become who you needed them to be. Remember, there are infinite causes, infinite factors, but it does mean that your coherence is no longer stabilizing the old pattern. You're no longer participating in keeping that dynamic locked in place through the quantum field. Some people experience this as spontaneous shifts in their relationships. A parent who's been distant for decades suddenly reaches out. A sibling who's been hostile suddenly softens. Not because you did anything to them, but because you changed your coherence with the pattern that was generating that dynamic through the quantum potential. Other people experience this more subtly. The relationship doesn't change externally, but their internal experience of it transforms completely. The pain that used to arise doesn't have the same charge. The triggers that used to destabilize them don't activate the same patterns, because they're no longer coherent with the frequency where those patterns unfold. And here's something else that Bohm discovered that has massive implications for how you understand your life. He found that the quantum potential contains what he called implicate memory. Everything that's ever happened is still enfolded in this field. Not just your personal history, but the history of your family line, your culture, your species, the universe itself. This explains something that's always puzzled psychologists. Why do some people carry wounds that don't seem to come from their own direct experience? Why do patterns repeat through family lines even when the current generation never experienced the original trauma? Because at the implicate level, all of that history is enfolded in the quantum potential, and it's all available to unfold through you. You might be carrying your grandmother's grief, your great-grandfather's rage, your ancestors' terror, not because you inherited it genetically in the traditional sense, but because you're coherent with frequencies in the quantum potential where those patterns are enfolded. This is what people mean when they talk about ancestral healing, about breaking generational curses. They're talking about shifting your coherence so you're no longer unfolding those ancestral patterns from the implicate order. And when you do this, when you transform your coherence with those deep ancestral frequencies, you're not just healing yourself, you're providing different active information to the quantum field that connects your entire lineage. Some indigenous cultures have understood this for thousands of years. They've understood that healing moves in all directions through time, that when you heal a pattern in yourself, you're healing it backward through your ancestors and forward through your descendants. Bohm's physics gives us the scientific framework to understand how this actually works through the quantum potential. Let me give you a practice that emerges from this understanding, something you can work with right now. The next time you notice yourself in a pattern you want to shift, in anxiety or unworthiness or protection or collapse, instead of trying to fix it or change it or make it go away, try this. First, recognize that this pattern is a holographic projection. It's real, it's affecting you, but it's not ultimate. It's being projected from a deeper order. Second, feel into what's enfolded beneath the surface pattern. Not the anxiety itself, but what the anxiety is protecting. Not the unworthiness itself, but what the unworthiness is covering. There's always something deeper enfolded, usually something that felt too dangerous to feel when you were young. Third, ask yourself, what coherence is this pattern arising from? What frequency am I tuned to right now? Not to judge it, not to shame yourself for it, but simply to become aware of it. Awareness itself begins to shift coherence. Fourth, recognize that you are not this pattern. You are the field from which it's arising. You are the observer, the source, not the projection. This recognition alone begins to create space between you and the pattern. And fifth, allow the enfolded pain to unfold without trying to control or fix it. Let the grief be grief. Let the terror be terror. Let the rage be rage. Not forever, not as a permanent state, but as a wave moving through the field. Because when you stop resisting the unfoldment, the pattern can finally complete its cycle and unfold again in a different configuration. This isn't a quick fix. This isn't a technique to make uncomfortable feelings go away. This is a practice of recognizing what you actually are, of operating from the implicate order rather than trying to rearrange the explicate order. And the more you practice this, the more your default coherence shifts, the more different patterns begin to unfold naturally in your life. Let me give you a concrete example. You encounter someone who could be beneficial for you. Someone kind, available, emotionally mature, but immediately your system activates hypervigilance. Danger signals everywhere, distance, protection. You generate reasons why it won't work, why they're secretly threatening, why you shouldn't trust this. From the trauma perspective, this makes complete sense. Your nervous system is protecting you. From the manifestation perspective, you might attempt to override it with affirmations, with choosing love over fear. But from Bohm's perspective, here's what's occurring. Your current coherence, shaped by childhood experiences, is tuned to unfold patterns of abandonment and threat. The quantum potential is responding to that coherence. You're projecting a holographic reality where trust equals vulnerability equals pain. You're not wrong. You're not broken. You're coherent with a different frequency. And the shift isn't to force yourself to trust. The shift is to become aware of what's unfolded, to feel the fear without judging it, to notice the protection pattern without condemning it, to allow the full unfoldment, the terror of vulnerability, the grief of never having experienced safe love, the rage at having to maintain this level of vigilance to express itself fully. And then, and this is the key, to recognize that this pattern, this unfoldment, isn't your essential nature. It's a projection being generated from a specific coherence. And you, the observer, can select a different coherence. Not by denying the fear, and not by pretending you feel safe when you don't, but by recognizing that fear is one possible unfoldment from the implicate order, and so is trust. Both are enfolded there. Both are available. The question is, which one are you coherent with? And here's where it becomes revolutionary. Bohm proved that at the quantum level, everything is non-local. All points in space are equivalent. Distance is irrelevant. Separation is an illusion of the explicate order, which means your inner experience and your outer experience aren't separate. They are two perspectives on the same implicate order. When you shift your coherence internally, you're transforming the active information in the quantum potential, which transforms what unfolds externally. Not magically, not instantaneously, not with absolute control over every detail, but genuinely, measurably, scientifically. This is why people discuss being the change or embodying the frequency. They're pointing at this quantum truth. You cannot manipulate the projection, but you can transform what you're coherent with, which transforms what the quantum potential organizes. Now here's where this gets really interesting, and it's something that bridges ancient wisdom with modern physics in a way that might completely shift how you understand spiritual practice. Every genuine spiritual tradition, whether it's Buddhism or Taoism or Christian mysticism or Sufism, they've all pointed at the same truth. They've all said, in different languages, that your true nature is not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your body, not your personal history. Your true nature is something much larger, something that ancient texts called consciousness, awareness, the witness, the self with a capital S. Bohm's physics gives us a scientific framework for understanding what they were pointing at. Your true nature is the implicate order itself. You are not the projection. You are the field from which all projections arise. And every spiritual practice that actually works, whether it's meditation or prayer or contemplation or inquiry, is fundamentally about shifting your identity from the explicate level to the implicate level, from the projection to the source. This is why meditation often feels frustrating when you first start. You're sitting there trying to quiet your mind, trying to stop your thoughts, trying to control the projection. But that's not what meditation is really about. Meditation is about recognizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the field in which thoughts arise. You are not your emotions. You are the space in which emotions unfold and enfold. And when you truly recognize this, not intellectually, but as lived experience, something profound happens. You stop being at the mercy of your patterns, not because the patterns disappear, but because you recognize that you are not the patterns. You are the source from which they're arising, and from that recognition, your coherence naturally shifts. Bohm called this the transition from implicate order to super-implicate order. He suggested that there might be even deeper levels of reality beyond the implicate order, levels where consciousness itself is the fundamental reality, and matter and energy and space and time are all secondary projections from that primary consciousness. This is exactly what the ancient wisdom traditions have been saying. That consciousness is not produced by matter. That awareness is not an emergent property of complex neural networks. That the field of awareness itself is the ground of all being, and everything else, including your brain, your body, your entire material reality, is arising within that field. And if this is true, and Bohm's physics strongly suggests it is, then everything changes about how you approach your life. You're not a separate individual trying to survive in a hostile universe. You're not a damaged brain trying to produce the right chemicals. You're not a collection of trauma patterns trying to heal yourself into wholeness. You are the wholeness itself, temporarily experiencing itself through the lens of this particular human form, with this particular history, with this particular pattern of unfoldment. And the healing journey isn't about becoming whole. It's about recognizing that you are wholeness, exploring itself through the temporary experience of brokenness. Let me address something that might be arising as resistance right now. If I'm already whole, if I'm already the source, if all of this is just a projection, then why does the suffering feel so real? Why does the pain cut so deep? Why does the trauma have such a grip on my nervous system? And this is the crucial distinction. The projection is real at its own level. The explicate order is genuine. Your suffering is not imaginary. Your pain is not an illusion in the sense of being fake or unimportant. It's an illusion in the sense that it's not ultimate reality. It's not your essential nature. It's a pattern unfolding from a deeper order, but it's a real pattern with real effects at the explicate level. This is why spiritual bypassing is so dangerous. When people use these teachings to dismiss their pain, to avoid their trauma, to pretend they're already enlightened and therefore their suffering doesn't matter, they're actually stabilizing the pattern they're trying to transcend. They're keeping the pain enfolded through resistance, which locks it in place, which keeps them tuned to that frequency. The path is not to transcend your humanity. The path is not to rise above your pain into some disembodied spiritual realm. The path is to recognize that your humanity, your pain, your trauma, your brokenness It's all part of the holographic projection, and you are the source of that projection. Both truths are valid simultaneously. The pain is real, and you are not the pain. The trauma happened, and you are not the trauma. The brokenness exists, and you are not broken. This is what Bohm meant by undivided wholeness. Not wholeness as in perfection, not wholeness as in having no problems, but wholeness as in the totality of what is. The light and the dark, the joy and the pain, the clarity and the confusion, all of it unfolding and enfolding together as one unified field. And when you can hold both truths simultaneously, when you can feel your pain fully while also recognizing that you are the field in which that pain is arising, something remarkable happens. The pain doesn't necessarily go away, but your relationship to it transforms completely. You stop being identified with it. You stop being controlled by it. You stop organizing your entire life around avoiding it or fixing it. And I want to be absolutely clear about something. This doesn't mean you caused your trauma. This doesn't mean you're responsible for everything that occurred to you. Infinite. Causality means there are factors far beyond your awareness or control. But it does mean you have agency now. Genuine agency. Not over the past, not over other people, not over external circumstances, but over your coherence, over which frequency you're tuned to, over which aspects of the implicate order you allow to unfold through you. You are not a victim of the projection. You are its source, and the wholeness you're seeking. The innocence, the joy, the capacity for trust and love and ease. It's not gone. It was never gone. It's enfolded in the implicate order in this moment. It's always been there. You simply couldn't perceive it because you were coherent with a different pattern. But now you know. Now you understand that the tangible reality of your everyday existence, your anxiety, your triggers, your relationship patterns, your sense of fundamental brokenness, it's all a holographic projection. Real, yes. Affecting you, yes, but not ultimate, not permanent. Not who you are at the deepest level. At the deepest level, you are what Bohm called undivided wholeness in flowing movement. You are the totality. You are the quantum potential. You are the implicate order expressing itself through this particular unfoldment we call your life. And when you truly grasp this, not intellectually, but as lived experience, everything transforms. Not because you forced it to transform, not because you manifested harder, but because you stopped attempting to repair the projection and started recognizing yourself as its source. You are the observer collapsing the wave function. You are the coherence organizing the quantum potential. You are the one generating the projection. And the question isn't, am I broken? The question is, what am I projecting? So here's what I want you to take from this today. You were never broken. Not fundamentally, not at your core. What you experienced as brokenness was a specific pattern unfolding from the implicate order. A pattern shaped by infinite causes, maintained by trauma coherence, projected as your holographic reality. But you are not the projection. You are the source. And at the source level, wholeness never ceases existing. It's simply sometimes enfolded, hidden, waiting for coherence to shift so it can unfold again. The work isn't to repair yourself. The work is to recognize what you are, to feel what's been enfolded, to allow the full pattern to express and release, to transform your coherence by transforming your relationship to what is. This is the science. This is what Bohm discovered. Reality is a projection. The observer participates in what unfolds, and nothing is ever truly lost. If this activated something in you, if you felt that recognition, that sense of, perhaps I'm not as fundamentally damaged as I believed, take a moment and comment below with this phrase: I am the source field. Let me know you're here. Let me know you're part of this exploration. Now here's what nobody reveals about what we just covered. We discussed reality being a projection. We discussed you being the source of the projection. But there's one element we haven't addressed yet. One discovery that Bohm made that transforms everything about how you interact with this holographic universe. And it has to do with what's occurring inside your skull in this moment. Carl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford, took Bohm's holographic model and discovered something stunning about your brain. Something that explains why certain people can access the implicate order effortlessly, while others remain trapped in the explicate. Something about the lens you're using to decode reality. And when you understand this lens, when you understand what your brain is actually doing right now as you process these words, the entire framework shifts. And that's the next exploration. And if you're feeling that pull, that sense of, I need to understand what comes next, then I invite you to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to this frequency, this space where we bridge the gap between the science and your actual lived experience, where we explore what most consciousness content won't address. You are the projection and the source, the wave and the observer, the unfoldment and the field. You always were. I'll see you in the next one. Now here's what you need to understand about what happens when your coherence shifts. When you truly recognize yourself as the source field, you begin operating from a completely different frequency, one that doesn't just attract what you want, but magnetizes reality itself to reorganize around your new state of being. In my next video, how to maximize your vibration so that reality bends before you, I'm revealing the specific mechanics of vibrational amplification and how to sustain the exact frequency where the quantum field has no choice but to respond. This isn't about raising your vibration temporarily, it's about becoming the frequency itself.